66 million years ago, the world ended in a single, terrible moment. An asteroid 10 kilometers wide slammed into Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs. Fires swept continents. Debris choked the atmosphere. Darkness fell. 3/4 of all species on Earth vanished. The dinosaurs were gone. The mosasaurs that ruled the seas, gone. The pterosaurs that owned the skies, gone. Yet in the rivers and swamps, something survived. Something that had been there long before the dinosaurs rose to power. Crocodiles, not by luck, but because they were built to endure collapse. Here's what most people get wrong. When they picture crocodiles, they see living fossils, unchanged relics from the dinosaur age. But the truth is stranger. Crocodiles belong to Archosauria, the same lineage that gave rise to dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and eventually birds. They're one of only 2 surviving branches from an evolutionary tree stretching back 250 million years. And they weren't always like this. Early crocodilians weren't semi-aquatic predators lurking in rivers. Some were swift land runners. Others were tiny insect eaters. There were even herbivorous crocodiles with mammal-like teeth. There were marine species with flippers, terrestrial hunters that galloped like dogs, giants that preyed on dinosaurs. And there were also good people like you who pressed the like button and subscribed. Thank you. The modern crocodile is just one narrow branch of what was once an evolutionary explosion. And here's the remarkable part. By the time the dinosaur-killing asteroid arrived, crocodiles had already survived one apocalypse. The end Triassic extinction, 201 million years ago. Volcanic eruptions tore through the supercontinent Pangaea. Temperatures spiked, oceans acidified. 76% of all species vanished. Back then, crocodiles weren't dominant. They were small to medium-sized land-dwelling generalists, eating insects and small animals, barely holding on while other reptile groups ruled. When the extinction hit, those dominant groups disappeared completely. The specialized predators, the hyper-carnivores, they all died. But the terrestrial generalists, the ones that could eat almost anything, survived. And then something extraordinary happened. They exploded. Aquatic predators, terrestrial herbivores, ocean-going hunters, the croc version of a lion. For the next 135 million years, crocodiles diversified into ecological roles we can barely imagine today. They weren't just survivors, they were conquerors. By the time the asteroid arrived, they were veterans of disaster. The asteroid itself was catastrophic, but it was the aftermath that killed most species. Dust blocked sunlight for months, possibly years. Without sunlight, photosynthesis collapsed, plants died, herbivores starved, carnivores followed, a complete food chain collapse. But not all ecosystems collapsed equally. And this is where crocodiles had their first advantage. Freshwater environments weren't as devastated as marine or terrestrial ones. While ocean animals depended on living phytoplankton and land animals needed growing plants, freshwater systems could run on detritus, dead organic matter, decomposing vegetation washing downstream. The food chain wasn't based on what was growing, but on what was already dead. While dinosaurs watched their prey disappear, crocodiles could feed on carrion, dead plant matter, invertebrates, anything that didn't require a functioning ecosystem. They could eat what was washing past. But even with food available, there wasn't much of it. This is where their second advantage became critical. Crocodiles are cold-blooded. They don't generate body heat like mammals and birds. This sounds like a weakness, but during a mass extinction, it was a lifeline. Warm-blooded animals burn through massive amounts of energy just staying warm. Up to 80% of their food goes to maintaining body temperature. Think about T-Rex. 6 tons of muscle requiring constant fuel. When the food chain collapses, you have weeks before starvation. If you're a crocodile, you can wait it out. Their metabolism runs at just 10 to 15% of what you'd expect for their size. Just 20% body fat can sustain a crocodile for up to 2 years without eating. One Nile crocodile survived 68 months trapped in a drying waterhole, losing 80% of its body mass. When crocodiles fast, their heart rate drops, breathing slows. They enter metabolic shutdown, conserving every bit of energy. Picture the months after impact. Darkness, cold, dying forests, starvation everywhere. Dinosaurs couldn't adapt fast enough. Crocodiles simply waited, motionless in rivers, barely breathing, living off fat reserves while the world burned. Their third advantage? They could hide. Crocodiles dig burrows into riverbanks, sometimes 18 meters deep. Modern crocodiles enter estivation during droughts, burying themselves in mud for months. The mud hardens around them, protecting them from temperature extremes. When conditions improve, they emerge. During the impact winter, this ability would have been invaluable. Underground, shielded from debris, protected from temperature swings, with minimal need for food or oxygen, they could ride out the catastrophe. Dinosaurs couldn't burrow. They had no shelter from the worst of it. Water itself provided protection. River systems acted as refugia because water temperature is far more stable than air. A crocodile submerged in a deep pool experienced less dramatic swings than any land animal, and their food webs relied on the resilient detritus cycle, not photosynthesizing plants. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Half of all crocodile species went extinct during the KPG event. This wasn't a clean sweep. 10 crocodile families existed in the late Cretaceous. 5 disappeared, 5 survived. The survivors shared specific traits. They were semi-aquatic, inhabiting freshwater rather than purely marine environments. They were generalists, eating fish, mammals, birds, invertebrates, carrion, whatever was available. And crucially, they were small to medium-sized. The giants died. Size became a liability when food was scarce. There's one more detail. Even the marine crocodiles that survived did so partly because their juveniles lived in fresh water. When ocean ecosystems collapsed, those young crocs had a refuge, a safe harbor, while the seas turned toxic and empty. The ones without that failsafe didn't make it. The pattern is clear. Semi-aquatic lifestyle, freshwater habitat, generalist diet, small size, slow metabolism, burrowing ability. Every trait acted as a buffer. None alone would have been enough, but together they created a survival profile that could withstand what the dinosaurs could not. Crocodiles weren't alone. Birds survived, the only dinosaur lineage to make it through. Small mammals survived. Turtles, frogs, salamanders all found ways. But crocodiles stacked more advantages than almost anything else. Metabolic efficiency for starvation, behavioral flexibility to exploit detritus, physical ability to burrow, freshwater niches that weathered extinction better, generalist strategies across every dimension. They weren't the strongest, they weren't the fastest, they weren't the most intelligent, but they were the most resilient. Today, about 28 crocodilian species exist. They look fundamentally similar to their ancestors from 66 million years ago. Same body plan, same semi-aquatic lifestyle, same sit-and-wait hunting strategy. They arrived at a design that worked across hundreds of millions of years and vast conditions. When the world collapsed, when extinction came for the Mesozoic's dominant life, that design proved flexible enough to endure. Yet endurance doesn't mean invincibility. Over half of all crocodilian species are now threatened with extinction. The Chinese alligator, the Philippine crocodile, the gharial. Not from asteroids, but from habitat loss, hunting, pollution, climate change. The irony is profound. These animals survived the worst mass extinction in 65 million years. They outlived the dinosaurs. They persisted through ice ages and continental drift. And now they're struggling against the one thing they weren't built to withstand. Us. There's a lesson here. Crocodiles didn't survive because they were superior. They survived because they could adapt, endure scarcity, and had options. When the world changed, they were flexible enough to fit whatever remained. We imagine survival as competition. The strongest wins, the fastest escapes, the smartest outwits. But mass extinctions don't work that way. When the world ends, it doesn't matter how powerful you were. It matters whether you can live on what's left. The dinosaurs ruled Earth for 165 million years. They were the largest land animals ever to exist, the most successful predators, the most diverse terrestrial ecosystem in history. And they died because they needed too much. Too much food, too much space, too much stability. Crocodiles needed less. They could wait longer, hide deeper, eat what others wouldn't. And when the asteroid fell and the fires burned and the darkness came, that was enough. Not strength, not dominance, just the ability to endure. The crocodiles that survived weren't some primitive form holding on by chance. They were the culmination of millions of years of evolution, shaped by every mass extinction that came before. The traits that saved them, slow metabolism, detritus-based diet, burrowing behavior, freshwater habitat, weren't accidents. They were adaptations refined across deep time, tested in crisis after crisis, honed into a survival kit that worked when nothing else did. 66 million years later, they're still here. Smaller than they were, less diverse, but here. Because when the world ended, they knew how to wait.